Welcome to Through Your Looking Glass, a podcast that explores the world of research technology. Combining speed and insights, ResTech reflects a deeper knowledge of the people around us. We're leading the conversation about this complex industry, which spans from traditional market research to advertising, media measurement, and beyond. Join us as we chat with experts and enthusiasts in the ResTech community and learn more about its evolution, application, and ever-growing potential.
All right, welcome, Rob. Welcome to this episode of Through Your Looking Glass. I'm extremely excited to have you with me today, so welcome.
Thank you, Patrick. It's a pleasure to be here.
And as a way of introduction to both of us, my name is Patrick Comer, and I'm the founder and CEO of Lucid. And I have with me Rob Holland, the CEO of Feedback Loop, which is formerly Alpha. And today we want to really discuss and go through two important topics. One is B2B marketing and how branding affects our customers' perception of our brand and of ourselves, and also the importance of research technology branding itself as ResTech. So these are the two topics we'll be going through today. But before getting into any of that, Rob, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and how you got to be here today?
Sure. So I'm the CEO of Feedback Loop, formerly known as Alpha. We work together. Obviously, we work together quite closely, our companies. So it's great to be able to just have this conversation and build on the work that we're doing. I think the whole idea of the research space and consumer research in particular, it's really just the culmination of my journey through my career. So for almost 3 decades now, I've been working in different aspects of the consumer space. Starting out in CPG with Clorox and then retail with Safeway out on the West Coast, and really learning how brands and consumers interact and then how consumers and shoppers make shopping decisions and purchase decisions. And I started there and then moved over to the research side over at Nielsen, where I ran Nielsen products across North America for about 10 years on the market research side. So that included shopper and consumer panels and all the different products across the board. And so working again with brands and retailers and consumers. After about 2 decades of big company consumer work, learning and working with some of the best brands and people in the industry, I went into the startup world and moved over to ad tech with a company called Datalogics that was pioneering the integration of purchase-based audiences into programmatic and the consumer platforms. So it was the early days and moving away from online behavioral and basic demographic information to bring it over into the actual purchase-based consumer information. So turning that and digitizing that was a phenomenal ride. We had a great run, and that business was acquired by Oracle, combined with other companies to do the data cloud. And did that, and then went over to martech, where it was really focused on consumer personalization at the retail, online retail, e-commerce space. So it was really about bringing the right product to the right consumer, the right price at the right time in the point of purchase cycle. And did that with a company called Bluecore for about 3 years. And then I decided to get into the research space because I see a big opportunity to drive agile research and to drive technology to really make research programmatic and to bring the voice of the consumer much earlier into the innovation cycle and much more broad across the companies that work with them. So that's what brought me here.
Rob, I am thrilled that you are leading Feedback Loop and a part of this industry because of that background. I mean, speaking personally, I've spent most of my entire career in research technology. And so to have someone with ad tech and martech now leading one of the prominent ResTech companies, it just means you can lend a lot of experience to the path that we're on. So I'm thrilled that you're a part of the story with us now.
Glad to be here, and it's really exciting times. And I think the environment was ripe, and it just from a technology and a business need perspective before the whole COVID crisis, and now even more so, it's just imperative that businesses can have the support they need to make the decisions they need.
Well, I know that you've been supportive of getting together to do this interview for a while. Part of that story is that when we were connecting over the summer, I mean, I think we spoke several times once COVID really started to engage, because there's so many dynamic things that we need to work through at the moment. We both started talking about this concept of ResTech, and not just the name, but the process of an industry defining itself. And I just really remember how important it was for me, both professionally and personally, for you to really say, I'm a believer, I understand what this does, and I'm ready to help out. And so thank you for engaging at this level. And I know that you've offered up your support in various ways to move the needle here. And just so everyone knows, as ResTech is a new concept in our industry, just a quick definition for those. ResTech, of course, is short for research technology. And the definition that we're working with right now is it's really an umbrella term for all the software and the tools that help either platforms, agencies, or brands target, deliver, or analyze any of their insights initiatives, whether that's called surveys or otherwise. So it's really meant to be an umbrella term of the digital transformation of our industry. The question I ask you is really, what is it about not only the name of ResTech, but the process that's important to you, feedback loop, and some of the experiences you can share from AdTech and MarTech along these lines?
The parallels are just really stunning, and they're very, very aligned. So if you think about AdTech and MarTech, what really converged was the evolution of technological capability, the ability of consumers to, and the willingness of consumers to engage technology at a fundamentally different level, and the expectations that created through the iPhone, through Google, through Facebook, through Amazon, through the big players and everyone else in the industry, coming together with the need to just produce more and more content and get it out faster and efficiently. And the research world is much like that. You think about buying ads in the old days. You go to lunch, you have a few cocktails, you get a paper IO, you might fax something over, and then you get into a media buy that was planned out weeks and months in advance. But the consumers and the distribution of the content was just changing. The platforms are changing, and you couldn't keep up. And you see it happening in television right now as well, which we were predicting for a decade, and it's starting to really hit. Same thing on MarTech. E-commerce is exploding, and it was exploding pre-COVID. You have to get the right people online. They want information instantaneously. The same thing holds true for MarTech. The number of people online at e-commerce and the pace of shopping is so fast that you have to have algorithms to be able to run and put the right types of offers and products in front of the consumers at the right time to make them drive purchase decisions. There's a lot of data. Everything's being tracked, so you can automate that, and you can really do that at scale. On the research side, the demand for agile business, agile management, agile product development, to be able to spool up and create the marketing programs to support AdTech and MarTech requires research to move faster. And that means that you have to take technology to automate many, many steps. Think about a classic survey and doing that as a project. You have to go and you have to engage your agency. You have to write a brief. You have to define the business objectives. You have to create the survey. You have to go and figure out where you're going to source the survey, run the survey, collect the data, clean the data, structure the data, report the data. That's weeks or months and thousands of dollars. And meanwhile, the decision's already been made. So there's a way to automate all those steps. That's what we're doing at Feedback Loop. Our platform takes about 30 steps to run, 400-person survey with about 10 questions, and it condenses it down to 6 steps, of which are automated. We can compress that down to 3 days or less. And we can deliver a survey, launch it, design it, launch it, and deliver it. And it can be used and deployed to take action and make decisions. So technology is required to make that happen at scale.
That's a huge efficiency gain, going from, what you said, 30 some odd steps down to 6.
That's right.
Just from an internal process and labor. But also, one of the key things people miss about programmatic is it reduces error. We learned this in our investigation of how in fintech, in the finance industry, programmatic or algorithms one of the biggest values, yes, there was the efficiency, but it was really the reduction in error, which is on the finance side would save, billions of dollars in terms of their processing.
That's so true. And the error piece is one of the things that's critical. So the quality goes up, the speed comes down, and you can really, for the right types of decisions, that means you can deploy and distribute research to much broader in the organization in a much more cost-effective manner, so that you can use data much earlier in the innovation cycles, so that you're constantly getting consumer feedback or other types of data broadly across research, and you can integrate that in more efficiently, and it can help companies learn faster and innovate smarter.
That's one of the key kind of changes in perception about programmatic and automation, that people don't understand how much the quality can improve when you automate, when you go down these paths of improving efficiency, when you adopt programmatic. We've seen this time and time again, where the expectation was that a slower, more expensive process or cost structure was higher quality. But once companies started to adopt aspects of programmatic, aspects of agile, they start to realize actually the quality of data collection and insights is actually improved. And obviously we enjoy that because we're both on the ed tech, the ResTech side of things. But it's something that our customers are starting to see as well. And that's a key benefit they may not have been expecting.
Well, and that's part of the opportunity and the challenge of this whole transformation into agile research.
Yep.
So, and it's a major element of what we're focusing on at Feedback Loop as we bring this and help evangelize it in the market. Because, as would be expected, research has a fiduciary responsibility to mitigate risk, to help make sure that data's quality data, and the whole concept of quality is so critical. But it needs to be reimagined, because if you're thinking about doing a waterfall development, whether it's a product, it's a campaign, it's a marketing message, what have you, you need to do a lot of heavy research up front, because you're going to start building and you're going to go on down a path that you got to be right. I remember the days at Clark's where we would do mini markets and test markets, where we'd literally take over cities and fill grocery stores with product before we'd launch it nationally. And it was so expensive, and we could do one of those every few years.
Wow.
And it took an enormous amount of time and energy and effort to get done. And you just can't move that way today, right? So getting people to understand that as they move to agile themselves, and agile research is part of that, the business teams just can't, they're flying blind, and they're making decisions. They have to make decisions rapidly, and the research teams just can't keep up. And so that creates a really big problem in the business. And so we want to help the research teams support the product teams and enable product teams to have guardrails. Think of bowling and having the bumpers, so that they can actually do research on their own that is quality and that is sanctioned through the research teams and then distributed, so that they can actually move quickly. And that's a big shift, and that the industry's in the early stages of that shift. And that's the opportunity. And that's what we're trying to bring that message to the market, to make it safe and broadly adopted.
Well, it seems to be case in point for your most recent name change. So you originally called Alpha, and you can hear it in your language talking about agile and product development as a root. But most recently, you changed the branding and changed the name to Feedback Loop. So I'd love to learn more about that process and that evolution.
Yeah, it is an evolution. We're super excited about it. The idea of the name change really was meant to follow how our business has evolved, and our customers have helped us to grow and evolve. We're about 5 years old, and we've been in market really for about 4 years. And we started out as I'll call it a shadow research type of a tool that was meant to go a point solution that was really geared towards giving product managers the ability to quickly collect rapid consumer feedback and integrate it into their upfront product development cycle. So it was really around the alpha stage and even the pre-beta stage, so that they could integrate real data as they're making their first choice sets. And what's happened is we've evolved much beyond that. So we were actually working from all the way from the alpha stage through UX and finished product to get feedback on the finished product. So it's an end-to-end solution now. And so what we've seen is, and what we keep using in our language with internally and with our customers, is feedback loops, because we're providing consumer feedback to product and business teams, marketing teams, innovation teams, digital teams. We're also bringing it to, we're also connecting the digital and the product business teams to the research teams. So there's feedback loops between consumers and business teams, and feedback loops we're creating between business teams and research teams. And that's where we see the most power. Our strongest customers and our best relationships are when those two loops are working together in tandem and they're aligned. And that's exactly what we do. So we went out and we really start thinking about how do we simplify our name, make it more obvious about what we do. Alpha was not completely obvious, it was more subtle. Yep. And we shifted to an approach where we are bringing just a more direct communication of who we are and what we do.
So when you say two teams, what I'm hearing is the business teams and the research teams. Are those the two teams you're referencing?
Yes.
And what I'm also hearing you say is that there's a need for those teams to be in tandem of how they're iteratively, getting feedback, a sense of feedback loop for various products or various efforts. It also seems like there's a communication line between the two that needs to be created or strengthened. Is that part of the product suite or the service suite as well? Is how those two teams integrate or relate information?
Absolutely. So it's a shared platform, and there's different models, and the beauty of it is we're flexible enough in the approach to do everything from the most centralized model, where there's a centralized research team. Maybe they have a dedicated, maybe not dedicated research resource embedded in the business team, but where the research can be run through the research team and distributed to where the business teams work completely independent of research with sanctions and guidelines, and research can be as closer as far away as they feel they need to be or want to be. So every company has their own version of that. That's a continuum. There's no right or wrong answer. Whatever works best, we can accommodate it. And that's really where we find things, that helps us to really drive value and help to enable companies as they go through their own evolutions and transformations into agile and into just more rapid development.
And we're seeing a increasing acceleration on the speed of iteration, like how many different types of surveys, how fast they're being spooled up, and then actually how quickly they're coming in and out of field, how quickly all that data is being collected. And I see it as an evolution of learning within our customers' organization of what's possible. Because the mindset that a lot of organizations come into research is that it's slow, it's expensive, it's hard, it's for one department of an organization to handle. And what we see over time is that it's becoming iterate fast, and customers are creating new types of research products or new types of even feedback that were not even possible before because of the change in speed, cost, and agility here. So I'm curious as to how your customers learn what's possible over time, because the perception or expectations coming in are often so very different as compared to what's possible to do these days.
Yeah, it's so, let me start with a metaphor, and then I'll give you a real life example of how that's played out. So imagine you're in a car and you have to drive, and there's a storm going on. And so you're driving, you need to turn on your windshield wipers. Your windshield wipers are moving and they're giving you split-second clarity, but then it's immediately obscured through the rain. So it comes again. So you have enough constant iterative cycle feedback input to be able to navigate from point A to point B. It's not a perfect picture, but it's enough to keep moving, and it gets you, we have to go quickly and efficiently. That's exactly the concept. So you can really compress and do iterative cycles on research, different types of research to be able to move forward on your initiative. That's exactly what's going on ad tech and martech, by the way, right? A customer journey, you go here on a site to there, you get a different, you get immediately served up a different experience that is intended to incent you, meet your needs, and help you to make your purchase journey. On the ad tech side, it wherever you go, you can be, you can see advertising that's relevant to you and that is meaningful to you as a consumer. So it's the same concept. One of the greatest examples of how this has been done is one of our customers, Farmers Insurance. They were in a competitive situation where Lemonade came out and created this app that geared towards younger millennials and Gen Z around renters insurance. And the whole idea of that app and that first use case was to bring a new distribution channel to something that's new to all these consumers as they're growing and becoming, adults and needing to start insuring themselves. How do you get the concept of renters insurance? So they made it cool, they made it hip, they made it easy, they made it technology. Completely different direct-to-consumer model Lemonade did compared to going to your traditional insurance agent in a strip mall and working through paper back and forth to go get insurance. So they made it super simple, raised a lot of money, very successful story. Farmers, over 130-year-old company with a very big agent distribution model, spun up in a whole new team called Toggle, which is the brand. Okay. They create their own app, and they decided they needed to create an app and they needed to innovate very, very fast. So it was an agile business unit, agile team, and they used the feedback loop. We're one of their strategic partners, and they ran over a series of less than a year, well over 200 tests. They talked to tens of thousands of consumers, and they were able to get very specific incremental bites of feedback on decisions ranging from the name of the app and the colors to where does pet insurance fit and what's the right menu of options to feature so that you can drive attention, to how do you even use specific language and change legacy language around very specific elements of the insurance. So around certain types of components deep inside the policies. And they just continuously move through a cycle where they're running 20, 30 tests a month, and they're really processing that through and making decisions on it in real time. So it's a very good example of the incremental approach, but it's small bites, in rapid succession, where you can kind of navigate the way you need to in order to move quickly and really deploy agile in a meaningful way.
Yeah, when you said 201 year, that's basically once a test almost every single business day of the year.
Pretty much.
That's not a small number of A, surveys, but B, just handling the onboarding of a survey or a question, going out in the field, collecting the data, analyzing, and providing it feedback. There's a lot of what I'll say technology uplift required to make that efficient, because if you don't have the right platform, the concept of running 200 surveys can be quite daunting from a manual perspective. You're just going to manually do the whole thing.
Absolutely. And think about not just the running of the surveys, ensuring a level of quality, and then having the output ready to be consumed and used for decision making. And then being able to take that decision, right? Yep. So if it's one thing to get the surveys completed and even published, then you have to interpret them and act. So having that delivered in a way that's consumable is critical to the and making sure that the quality is there up front so that you can just drive through the process and not stop and vet ensure that the quality checks.
Well, now you've gone through this name change, this branding change, this bit of storytelling. What advice do you have for other organizations that are staring down this exact same process for reaching and telling their story to B2B customers, right?
Well, yes. So Gartner has been mapping the buyer journey for a long time, and the reality is in B2B, with the exception of very, very small spot purchases, there's anywhere between 6 to 10 people involved in any kind of purchase decision. So that's the first thing to keep in mind. You might have a great champion, but
Right.
you have to help that champion sell inside the organization. You're not selling to an individual, you're helping that individual sell, right? So that's pretty important to make a buying decision. You got to make it easy to buy. The underlying principle is it's never about your product and your solution. It's always about the customer's problem and their need. And you have to start there. And a lot of companies get real excited because they make great, really innovative, disruptive products. And of course, when you're trying to go to market, you believe in your products, right? So you want to drive them,
Yeah.
but it's really not about them and the product at all. It's about the problem, the solution, and you become part of the solution with the product that you bring to market. So don't forget that. That's super, super important. And then really the tactical piece is if you can get on the same side of the table as your champion and help them be successful, because not only do you have to convince them that that your product is the product to buy because
Right.
it solves their problem, but then you got to help them get that done, and that's really hard in companies. And I've been in small startups, and I've been in over 100,000 person organizations with in a relatively high position with pretty big budgets, and making purchase decisions is by definition difficult. It's an internal control process,
Yep.
right? So you need to spend political capital, and even if that's your job, and you're going to be judged by those decisions and how you navigate them through the organization. So just remembering that that's a super important element in getting anything done. That when you think about how do you work through B2B buyers and help them on their buyer journey.
Well, I want to switch gears to something that we started with that I get very passionate about is helping our industry define itself in a productive way. And the reason why I get excited, but also kind of been out of shape is I've struggled with this. I think we collectively have struggled with it since I got into research. And I came in on the sampling side. And it was very hard often to explain what we did, say, to my parents. That was always a challenge, but much less to a customer. What was the change going to be? And of course, in my experience as founder and CEO, raising capital, speaking with not only whether it's investors, whether it's capital partners, whether it's potential strategic partners, there was always this learning curve, this gap between what we could provide, what we did, and their ability to understand. And one of the origin stories of Lucid is we saw how specifically in ad tech, how that industry had certain business models that were known. And specifically within ad tech, it was exchanges and DSP, demand side platforms. And so we literally took that framing in order to understand our business model at Lucid to be the largest exchange and the largest DSP in the research space. However, what we started to recognize is it wasn't good enough just to adopt a business model if everyone didn't understand what you were. It's almost like we were neither fish nor fowl because we didn't have a bucket to be put in as.
Yeah.
And I never thought I'd say I needed to be put in a particular bucket, but without a clear definition of a category, without a clear definition of what we do, it's hard for everyone to rally around it. And we started at Lucid thinking about this. We talked about it at SampleCon conference in Q1. We could still be in person. And then you and I discussed it over Q2 during COVID, how important it was long term. And we've really dedicated ourselves to focusing on this definition process. We started also looking at how much investment is actually occurring in this overall space. And what was good to see, but also compelling to see, is that we're going to be last year and this year combined will be almost $2.5 billion of third-party investment into the ResTech space. And that's not a small amount of money. And of course, the curve is up and to the right, and it follows similar curves of investment of ad tech and martech. And so it seems like we're on the cusp of all this really coming together for all the right reasons. But I want to get back to that moment when I started talking about this concept with you. What really did you glom onto? What were the things that you really started to get? Because we seem to be on the same page, and I'm trying to explain why that's important. What do you see in this process that's of value to you and to your business?
Yeah, so we touched a little bit on this in the opening when we were talking a bit about some of the similarities. Essentially, when you think about ad tech or martech, and we talk about the macro themes, there was a compelling change in the consumer, the shopper, the consumer of media, the shopper, the purchaser of retail, and technology. So their psyche, their technology, and their willingness to basically open up new channels, new media channels, new retail channels, e-commerce channels. And then that created an audience of people that needed to be addressed. And there's an efficiency play, and there's money there, right? There's an economic opportunity. So that's really pretty fundamental to the ecosystems evolving and evolving quickly. I think on the research side, more to B2B, the B2B to C customers that we work with are trying to respond to all the changes going on at the consumer level. And we're just significantly more data driven in everything we do. And so what's crazy is we're not making decisions with enough data up front. And it's like the agile cost of change curve, right? It's like if you make decisions up front when you're planning, it's much cheaper. It's literally like, for every dollar, it's $10,000 after a product's produced to go back and change. It's like changing a house project when you lay out the plans, you design it up front, and then you start building it and you change it. It's a mess. It's never as good. So being able to there's a market to respond to the consumer response, and that's key. So from a ResTech, for me, and what makes me excited about it, and it's why I came to Alpha, now Feedback Loop, is I think that it's an emerging market. The economics, there's just too much money spent on research today. There's anywhere between 20 to $50 million of research, maybe more, spent globally. The US is at least 25 to 30 million.
I think the SMR numbers like 60 to 70 billion globally spent on research right now.
25 billion in the US. So that's a lot, and the fastest growing sector of investment is on tech.
Absolutely.
It's only a couple of billion, 1.5, 2 billion, which is a lot of money, but it's a fraction of what the potential is, right? So, so there's a real need. I think so that's what gets me excited. I think the problem that you teed up is around categories. As humans, we have to categorize things: good, bad, this, that. We have to it's a survival.
It's in our nature, right? It needs a category.
Tiger, good or bad, right? Is the person with the club that looks angry coming at me good or bad? Like it's innate. So we need to be able to categorize, and not that this is good or bad. That was just an illustrative example, but we got to put things in the categories, and we have to be able to have points of reference. And that's what we're establishing right now. And that's why it's hard. It's still a new concept. And what we need to do is really define it and create these points of reference. That's why agile research is a point of reference.
Right.
And where we fit in that pool, the way we think about it is, if you want something really sophisticated and precise, you're going to use a very highly precise, specialized research tool to do it. If you want, the other option is you can go and do a project. And then the other option is you can have shadow research that's ungoverned. You can get platforms and you can just run surveys or ask questions, but you don't have any control over it. We fit right in the middle of there. So we can source for most of the business decisions. It's the Pareto principle. 80% of decisions are like that windshield wiper.
Yep.
Metaphor. You can do that. And that's a huge part of the market. And that's where we see a lot of opportunity.
Well, I like the categorization, but also the lessons learned. One of the key values that ResTech has is we get to see the evolution of ad tech and martech, the good aspects of it and the challenging aspects, because it hasn't all just been easy breezy. It also allows us to understand what business models are likely to be needed as we mature and as we evolve. It also allows us to understand what outcomes are possible. If we think about the number of ad tech and martech, say unicorns or public companies, all the success stories that come out of a technology transformation of an industry. And my belief is that there are a ton of incredible ResTech companies, not only that are maturing, but also being founded right now. And anything we can do to support them helps the overall growth of our industry, period.
Totally agree.
And I also predict, as much as there is a prediction and success around ad tech and martech convergence, I think over time we'll also see the research side come through as a necessary part of that convergence. And there's a lot of companies or brands or even agencies think about their ad tech stack. What are they using? More and more, they're starting to think about their martech stack. I think the ResTech stack will be another interesting conversation with CIOs and CTOs about how they're going to organize all this information that's coming through the pipes at various stages of products and advertising, and how it's going to integrate into that core kind of decision-making capability of the business. Because as you've seen, your customers seen, the ability to have agile decision-making is core to your competitiveness as an organization. The faster you can iterate with speed and accuracy, the faster you can move. You were just talking earlier about how you move forward the product evolution from 18 months to 9 months, some version of that, which is a huge effort, but that speed creates a tremendous amount of value. It's a shifting of gears. And as our broader customers on the research side understand they can shift gears and speed, that decision-making capability is core to the success of every organization that we work with. And I see that as the fundamental principle and shift is companies realizing that they can make decisions backed by data iteratively and faster than ever before.
That's right.
And that is something that's
right. And that reduces the investment, and you can even fail fast and move on. I mean, that's what one of Amazon, the most valuable,
absolutely,
next to Apple in the globe. Maybe they beat them today. I don't know. They keep going 1 and 2, but $1 trillion market cap companies fail fast. Like, who's going to argue with that, right? Move on and go and make it easy to do that. And that does drive, I think, the opportunity to even when you break research down into smaller bites and smaller pieces, you can embed it and it can be produced quickly. You can embed it deeper into other components. You can integrate consumer research or research into personalization and get a little bit more of the why on top of the behavior, right? You can combine those. You can do the same thing on the media side. So there's definitely opportunities as it just breaks down into the molecules and the elements, and you can build infrastructure to drive that through. So I think that's really where the future is. And there'll be room for and definitely space for the precise, absolute, complete, deep research. Absolutely. But that's really specialized, and that's really for a subset of the decisions that have to be made. Most decisions can be made with a lot faster, with a lot less intensity.
Yeah. Well, with these interviews, I always ask the same 3 kind of last questions that are not about business at all. It's more about how you have your experiences. So I'll just go through them. The first one is, what was your first job? And by job, think of your first check in the mail, as it were. And what lessons do you continue to use from that first job?
Check in the mail, paycheck, not my paper route job, which actually I did learn a lot back in the day. But I think my first job was at Clorox, and I came in actually as an internal auditor, and
Okay.
and so I started on the finance side.
All right.
And I went to a plant in Jersey City, and we were auditing the plant. There's a union plant, a really tough union plant. And I grew up in New York, but I was out on the West Coast, and I was just a kid. I was 23 years old, and here I am walking in a plant. We used to wear suits back then in a plant, which was crazy. And I'm telling line operators how to run their business, and they're looking at me like, "What is wrong with you, kid?" Right? And these are tough Jersey City people, and I know them. I grew up right across the river.
Yep.
So I learned real fast to be humble. I learned real fast the power of experience and the value of experience over book smarts. And I just fell back on some roots of just respect. You respect everybody, and you respect whoever you're interacting with, and to pay attention to their point of view, because they knew more about what was right and wrong about the plant than any of us were ever going to do. And if you can actually connect with them and engage them, you can get more information and actually help the situation. And I was able to do that right out of school.
That's amazing. As a reference point, one of my first jobs in New York was at a Queens scene shop. I was a carpenter. Now, I'm not from Queens, and so there was a very clear cultural disconnect. But I learned similar lessons at that scene shop. And I think you know the type of workers there. It sounds very similar, where they knew exactly what they were doing, and no liberal arts college kid from Alabama was going to tell them how to build scenery. That was a good time. Second question is, what's the best bit of hard feedback you've ever received that just resonates with you still today?
You know, it was probably about the middle of my career. So I was at the point where I was successful at what I had done, but I was really starting to interact much more with senior management and executive management.
Yeah.
And I was pulled aside after one meeting of some sort, and I finally got the feedback I needed to hear, which was to remember to keep things as simple as possible, and especially things that are complex. That's the superpower. If you can figure that out and you can communicate that, you're going to be able to influence and accomplish it's going to be much easier to do that. And it ties back directly to what we were talking about on how you define ResTech.
Yep.
Right. It's like, how do you simplify the complex? It's why we went to feedback loop. It was clarity over cleverness, right? It's like, it's a principle that I still struggle with at times, and I want to I continue to work at it, but it was the best feedback I ever got, because it really changed my my life, not just professionally, personally, and professionally.
Well, that lesson seems to be, as you suggested, core to you, and also how you approached this brand change and this name change, right? Clever, make it simple. Make it straightforward. No need to be too complex. The last question to go with is more personal, but what's the most important thing you learned from your mother?
It's a great question. I don't know. I have a 1A and 1B. I think the most important thing she taught me was be good to people and always take care of your family. And the corollary of that, which is also don't let anybody outwork you ever. And really continue to just push when things get tough. And I've actually combined those two things, because sometimes you don't want to be good to people who aren't good to you. So you got to outwork it. You got to connect it, and you just keep driving. And that's what Mama taught me.
Gotta love the mother. I can imagine. Would she say, don't let anyone, would she actually use that phrase, don't let anyone outwork you? Is that how she said it?
That's literally how she said it. She actually said, don't let anyone ever
Ever. You got to put the ever in there. That's extra. That's extra right there. Oh, well, Rob, this has been glorious. Anything else you want to add to any of these things before we sign off here?
No, just again, thank you for the opportunity to get together.
I know.
The conversation is just energizing and inspires me. I'm excited about the space we're in, the opportunities in front of us. I love to disrupt. I've been part of a couple of big disruption curves. I want to be a third. That's what I choose to do. I live for it. And no one's going to outwork me in trying to get it done.
Ever. No one's ever going to outwork you.
Ever.
Well, I just so appreciate you being open and saying yes, not just to this moment, this interview, but really saying yes to partnership in a variety of ways. And from our first conversation, I got that sense from you. And Lucid and Feedback Loop, formerly Alpha, we've been working together for years in this disruption and building this capability. And it's been a great partnership between companies and also colleagues who have worked at both firms. And just can't thank you enough for that yes, for that openness and that willingness to engage on a whole bunch of levels to move the ball forward for our companies, but also for our industry. So I expect to learn a lot from you, given that ad tech and martech history as well. That's a great addition to all of us. So welcome, as it were.
Thank you, and I'm excited to get going. So let's go.
If you enjoyed this episode, be sure to subscribe to our show wherever you get your podcasts. For information on ResTech, our complete list of episodes, and more, visit luc.id/lookingglass. Thanks for listening.